session. British Council encouraged teachers around the globe to share experience and their learning. As a result of COVID, it is very difficult for teachers to come together and learn from each other. So we are supporting our teachers and teachers around the globe to work together through virtually and online. So this is our second experience sharing event. We tried to collect some information from teachers for them to give us discussion point, and most teachers asked us to discuss around setting educational objectives. And as you know, educational objectives are fundamental for teaching profession. So coming up with smart objective is very important for all teachers and also for school leaders to lead his schools and even to support teachers in classroom. Now, having said this, I will invite country director for the British Council Ethiopia to give us an opening remark. Nazanet.
Thank you, Nku. Hello, everyone. I'm Nazanet. Nku asked me to come in here and say a couple of words about what you are set to do today. So, indeed, I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and I would like to thank you all for making the time. I know this is a holiday period, and for you to make the time for professional development, I think that's impressive. So, thank you very much for making the time to talk about your own development, your own experiences. I believe we all recognize that professional exchanges are one way of development for teachers, and they are really key to people's developments. And I believe also they have become a lot more important these days as we are all grappling with all the challenges we face as a result of COVID-19. Our individual, personal lives have been affected. Our professional lives have been affected. I think schools are no longer the same schools as we used to know them in the past. There's been quite a lot of change, and as we're grappling through all of these changes, I think it's important that we have access to other fellow teachers so we can learn from one another, that we can also take inspiration from the work of other teachers. And I think it's also important to know that there is no one single reference material that we can all go back to and find the answers for the numerous challenges we face as a result of COVID and the changes that have come about. So I believe the answers are within each individual teacher. As you are all working through your challenges in your schools, as you are working through the challenges you have in your community, and continue to develop solutions day by day, I think that's where the solutions are. And it is really, really important that those solutions and also the operating context is shared with other teachers so they can also learn lessons from it. They can take inspiration out of that. And I believe a platform like these afternoons is really key in that regard, because as I said earlier on, one is because solutions, I think these days are going to be more and more localized, but also it is really encouraging for other teachers to see how other teachers are dealing with more or less similar challenges. And at the British Council, we say one of the things that we are set up to do is exactly that. We create the opportunities for people across the globe to come around the table and find solutions to our shared challenges. And I believe this exactly is one way of doing that. So I think just simply to say that you are doing the right thing, and I believe the impact of COVID will stay with us. For us here in Ethiopia, for example, there was an important session this morning with the Minister of Education and with the regional education bureaus, where we are talking about the millions of children who have not returned back to school. So schools reopened a couple of weeks ago, but there are over 10 million children who have not reported to school yet. So we still have got quite a lot of challenges that we need to deal with. And as I said, the situations are quite different from region to region, from zone to zone, and from school to school. And we really, really want to depend on teachers to be able to innovate and find solutions that work for their respective situations. So I believe in this, deliberations, you'll get to learn more about how teachers are finding solutions to their problems. You're going to, hear from the experience of other teachers, and I hope you'll then be able and inspired to do the same, in your communities. So maybe in closing, let me just say that, this is something that we are set up to do as British Council. We would like to support you to have many more sessions in the new year. And I wish you all the very best this afternoon and look forward to hearing from Unko and the team about how this goes. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay on with you for throughout. So allow me to drop in now, but I wish you all the very best. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazanet. In today's session, we are going to cover 3 or 4 objectives. We are going to discuss on how teachers set smart educational objectives, share experience of experienced teachers and school leaders in setting educational objective. We'll discuss expectation of head teachers or principals on how to support teachers while they set educational objective. And finally, there are common challenges while teachers set educational objective, and we'll analyze those challenges. Now I invite participants to introduce themselves. So you can tell us who you are, your qualification, and your school. Let me start from Mr. Phillip.
Of Equals Trust, which is an academy, multi-academy trust in Nottinghamshire, and we've got 12 primary schools. We're primary based. Previously, I've been a teacher and a head teacher and an executive head teacher. I'm also sometimes head teacher if the school needs me, and as people have just been saying, the COVID period has put us into some difficult positions, and we've had our senior leaders off, so I've had to go into schools to be that senior leader sometimes as well. So all this, I've learned, I think, that being old has benefits of experience, and you can draw on all of that. But at the present, I'm the CEO of Equals Trust with 12 primary schools.
Thank you, Mr. Phillip. Dr. Merle.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Merrill Bachholder. I was a middle school teacher in Northumberland in the north of England. I'm subject leader for science in a small middle school. So my main job is to teach. I spend a lot of time trying to do STEM activities with children in the school, whether it's in lessons or whether it's in a STEM club. And I'm also a Teach SDG ambassador, so promoting awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I am a UN accredited climate change teacher, so raising awareness about climate change and how serious it is as an issue for our young people.
Thank you, Dr. Merle. Mr. Apollo.
I'm running a primary school, which has about 600 pupils. Initially, before I joined primary school, I was having a farm school, training big girls and boys sustainable farming skills. Now, I decided to also start this primary school, which I'm running right now. I hold a bachelor's degree from Makerere University in environmental science, as well as a certificate in education. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Apollo. Dr. Almas. Doctor, you are mute. Please unmute your computer.
Sorry, I am Almas Varaki from Kotabe Metropolitan University. I am a master trainer, a teacher educator, advisor to the Ministry of Science and Higher Education. a board member to the Marcos University, and a consultant for the British Council for nearly 14 years now. This is it.
Thank you, Dr. Almas. Mr. Work. Mr. Work.
Hello. Enko.
Yes,
Have you heard me?
we can hear.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes, we can hear you.
I am Turwelk, a co-founder of Yanita Academy for the last 17 years. This school is from KG till grade 12 in Addis. This is it.
Okay, thank you all. I think thank you again for your time to share your experience. We have ample experience of educators and teachers as well as head teachers today. So let us start from Mr. Apollo. So as a head teacher, we need to support our teachers during setting educational objectives. So how can you support your teacher while they prepare educational objective or lesson objectives? What is your focus? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. I think, first of all, teachers, they should be in position to differentiate between what an objective is from a goal. Because you find that goals are much more broad and sometimes they are difficult to measure. They're not measurable. But with the objectives, of course, you know, they are measurable. And as we know, when you look at the other formula of SMART, they have to be attainable, they have to be time-bound. So these education objectives, first of all, they should focus on some area whereby after every, let's say, after maybe a topic, after a lesson, the children can be in position to achieve any testing from the teacher. For example, after the lesson, we are supposed to test them and see whether they have been in position to pick what the teacher has been passing on. So they should be measurable at a certain point. First of all, you find that how do we support our teachers? First of all, we should help them, first of all, to differentiate between these, the objective and the goal. Then there we can be in position to help the teachers. Then once we help the teachers to know that, definitely the information passed on to our pupils or to the students will be okay, because they'll be knowing exactly what to do. Then secondly, we should help the teachers. How should we prepare? We should help the teachers prepare education objectives. This is achievable because once you give some bit of support supervision to our teachers, you support them, you check on them, because through these feedbacks, they can definitely know where to go, what to maintain, and what to improve if they make any mistakes. So definitely we need some supervision. These teachers, support supervisions to the teachers. Then from there, they can know basically what to do. Because, you know, in Uganda, funny enough, we have a lot of children going to school, but actual learning is not there. And what's the problem? The problems, they are the teachers. They are not supervised. They are not told what to do. So they just go for the in class for the sake of going. So definitely, as in a school, we need to do what we call support supervisions. Then the teacher can give feedbacks to these teachers. Then from there, they can know exactly what to do. Because if you don't supervise them, they will just do whatever they want, not being supervised. And the children will ultimately don't get exactly what they're supposed to get in class. And that's the area where we lose the point. So for me, I'm saying we should give support supervision to our teachers. Then through this, we can give them the feedbacks. And through feedbacks, the teachers can be in position to know what to maintain, where to improve, areas of improvement.
Thank you, Mr. Apollo. So as a school leader, we need to support our teachers, and the support need to be during supervision, during setting objective, and so on and so forth. So this will guide us to next question for Mr. Phillip. Again, as experienced head teachers, and so how can you check whether educational objectives are well prepared and to the standard? What are your criteria?
Well, I can do this on two levels, really. One as a head teacher for a school, and one as a CEO across sort of 12 schools, where we do a lot of moderation. And I think Mr. Apollo's very, very right that the objectives have to be measurable, but also a teacher has to have support in how to do this. Now, we follow a very, very simple model, and it's called plan, do, and review. And this can come in. This can come into anything, really. In England, we've just had, well, in the last year or so, a new curriculum brought in, and before that, it was a new assessment. And the new curriculum has meant that there's a new structure to the information and the knowledge that pupils learned. Now, I think this is based on that a lot of teaching has been around activities, really nice activities. You know, the children have a great time and they learn something, but actually, what is it we're trying to deliver? What are we trying to get the children to learn? And our curriculum now is more specific. And so instead of the activities leading the learning, it's the objectives that are leading the learning. And then the activities can be built around them. And that's been really important for us in the planning for it. Now, to plan for that, we've made that there is a national curriculum, but also there's a curriculum. It's specific for each school in some areas. So teachers have planned their objectives for those different subjects, and it's quite subject based. And these are then taught in the classroom. Now, in the classroom, we have again been very specific because there's lots of abilities in the class, and previously we aimed activities at individual, at group abilities, and we've now kind of moved away from that because we found that it stopped children. It gave barriers of learning to children, and children who we previously thought may have been low ability weren't given the chance to have a look at the high ability work within that objective. And so now we put in a scale, a ladder of objectives on in our planning, and that's on a daily basis. And so children can have, after experience, they can look at a place where they think they want to start the learning for that lesson, and that will be based on previous learning. And hopefully they're encouraged to extend themselves and to make better progress than previously they would. Now, as a school, we would often have the head teacher would then, it's called monitor and evaluation. So they would, so we've had the planning and we've had the doing in the classroom, and the reviewing is that the head teacher can go around and make sure that the objectives are being delivered properly through observations in classes. They can take in the pupils' books and have a look at the objectives and the ladders of them and make sure that the children's work corresponds to that. And you can then compare year groups to make sure that the children in the class are making progress, but also the children between year groups are making progress. And now as a CEO, now we're a group of schools, we can do that between schools. So we have sessions called moderation sessions, and we can get teachers from the same year group in all of the schools together and compare the objectives and compare the work. And, you know, as a head teacher, we can put our hands on our heart and say, yeah, actually, that teacher and those children are learning and making really good progress.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Phillip. Maybe we'll come again later.
Okay.
So you have mentioned strong points like plan, do, and review. And again, we need to check with the students whether those objectives are attained or not. And also, you mentioned around experience sharing between schools. That is of a paramount importance for as a teacher, also as a school leader, to promote that experience sharing for better and standard educational objectives. So many teachers copied, objectives from textbooks and syllabus. So Our next question is for Ms. Truwerk. As educator, as teacher, how can we contextualize objective from textbook or syllabus? What should be our considerations? Unmute your.
Okay, thank you, Nkuye. Educational objectives or learning outcomes are statements that clearly describe what the learners will know to be able to do as a result of having attended educational program or activities. That can be a textbook or syllabus. Textbook and syllabus helps teachers and learners in this regard to provide the basic framework within which most of classroom activities occurs in the classroom. It also gives every child the best opportunity to learn. So knowing the real design of objective is very important. But this textbook's really a framework, but it should go aligned to the purpose of education. As my friends mentioned above, after all, we evaluate everything, the final output. What do we want to see as a teacher? What do you want to see as an educator? What do you want to see as a nation? That is the main target. We might have a best objective, but if you don't want to see it at last, it means nothing. What is the purpose of education? And we should have to have common ground as a teacher. The education demands, education is civilization, yes, which has a definition which is partly individual and partly social. It consists individual, both intellectual and moral quality too. So when we design our objective, we should have to more what's our ultimate goal. You know what I'm saying? And intellectually, a certain minimum of general knowledge. We teachers are not knowledge providers. We should have to give our objective should give a highlight for a student to think more and to form their own opinion. This material or textbooks are a minimum general knowledge that we teachers can give, but we're not knowledge provider as we know. So we have to give a room for students to think more. Their silly idea is super so that they can bring a difference. Yeah. So duplication can't be education. Pouring materials, pouring those textbooks is a starting point, not education. So what we are expecting is education should retrieve from the student to the world. So if we let our objective really leave the student to repeat what is written on the material, I don't think that is education. So education should give a minimum, that we are planning is a minimum general knowledge to lead the student to think deep and to see the unseen, to discover the undiscovered. This is the important thing while we are designing our educational objective. The other thing is, as we said, education is civilization. Civilization demands moral quality. So teachers must ensure that all his or her planning activity contains a moral value, a moral education component. So while we are designing our syllabus or our other materials, we should underline those things.
Thank you, Truwerk. Thank you very much. I think you have mentioned a strong point that children should be at the center of planning. We need to plan from the point of view of children. This will lead us to the next question for Dr. Merle. Dr. Merle is experienced teacher specifically around STEM education. So what are the key questions for teachers? As a teacher, what kind of questions you ask yourself while setting educational objectives?
Okay,
you can connect this with a STEM project or STEM as a STEM teacher.
So I believe that education, it was lovely to hear from Apollo and Phillip and Truwerk, but I believe as an educator that it has to be relevant to the children that we are teaching. It's fine to teach them literature and maths, but if they can apply those ideas, they make a lot more sense to their learning. So when I'm teaching about science, I link my science to the Sustainable Development Goals. So we talk about plant reproduction, and we'll link it to the Sustainable Development Goal of zero hunger. So we try and link the learning to be relevant and timely. Now, STEAM education involves science, technology, engineering, art, and maths. And the art is becoming increasingly important, that we allow ourselves time to look at our science and then convey those ideas back to the people in our classroom, the wider community, and nationally, how important science is to understand some of the environmental issues that we are seeing. So when I use STEAM in my classroom and in my STEM clubs, we do exactly as Phillip says. We plan, we do an investigation, we review it, and then we communicate it and improve on it. So when I say I want to make projects relevant, it really depends on where you live. Now, the problems we have in the UK are very different from some of the problems that you might see in East Africa. We have global issues, clean energy, clean water, but we have certain areas that are prone to flooding, certain areas that are prone to drought. So when you're looking at a STEAM project, you could choose something relevant to your area. So if you're in an area that floods, you could look at designing buildings that are flood resistant, or setting up flood alarms. If you live in an area for drought, you could think about tree planting, which helps with climate action. Or you could look at irrigation systems, or you could look at preventing locusts and how we can, use our science and technology to prevent locusts damaging crops. We know that's a big issue in East Africa this year. So it's about finding those problems and getting the pupils to think about solutions and researching solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Merle. I think one strong point you mentioned is the need to think of real life. Education has to go to real life and relevance to our context, our local area. Our next question goes to Miss Delphine. So, as a teacher, how can you use objective to guide your lesson?
As a teacher, I should understand objective is a competence that students need to acquire. So in doing so, I consider the cognitive verb that I use in preparing my objectives, that what do I want learners to achieve, to do? Objectives basically is what can pupils or learners do. So in doing so, I'll start from the simple to the complex one. Take an example of numbers, the verb of identify and naming the value of numbers. I start with identifying, then naming. So this will help the derive of the lesson from the simple to the complex, which will enable learners to acquire what I want them to do. Another thing is teachers should prepare. So I prepare the information that I use in teaching in the classroom in outline form as a roadmap to the end product of what I process in the classroom. The other thing is to give the foundation or the base to the learners to a position to build new knowledge through using different knowledge methods like storytelling, giving example of statistical informations, which will help them to build a new experience. And again, I will have my learners to experience and interact their new knowledge in the classroom and outside the classroom. Mind you that objective is what learners can do. So if it's a matter of what the learners can do, the objective should be relevance to the life subject, the life matters of the learners. Then again, how to align the core skills with the objectives by looking at the gap that found in the context, the condition of the area that I am. Take an example from Tanzania. We have this problem of truancy, peer pressure, and educational performance. Looking at those gaps, our problems found in the area that I am, I inset core skills basing on the life subject of the learners, solving the problems that is facing learners and organization as at large. So in doing so, I also create or demonstrate how to communicate the problems that the life matters in the learning process. But again, giving
thank you. Maybe we'll come back again. So yes, definitely objective will guide us. Maybe now, Dr. Almas, if you tell us how we can measure objective, or how do we know objectives are achieved or not?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, how can we measure that objectives have been accomplished? In essence, that's a very important question. What we have to do is we have to make that there is alignment. In our textbook, for example, we have the minimum learning competencies, what each student needs to get at the end of each lesson. So if we align the learning objectives, and then we have assessment and the instructional strategies, then we can measure whether what is taught in a lesson or whether the objective of the lesson has been achieved. You know, these three things have to be aligned. There has to be alignment. For example, if a teacher says, I'm going to teach numbers 1 up to 4 today, he can assess, or she can assess the lesson by doing the activities, the instructional strategies. So how is this teacher going to teach these numbers 1 up to 4? How are the students to be engaged? How much are the activities engaging so that the students can learn what the teacher has set as an objective? The assessment should not wait till the end of the lesson. That's how we can coach and how we can arrange the lesson so that our objectives could be made. So starting from the beginning, starting from introducing the numbers, the teacher has to assess, has to use different strategies and make sure that what is planned in the lesson is achieved. So as I tried to say, we can measure, we can see whether what we have designed as an objective and taught as a lesson is achieved at the end of the session or the lesson, if it is a unit, at the end of the unit, by assessing through different stages and using different instructional strategies and creating alignment in the objectives and the entire activity. Usually, you know, when we say objectives, the objective should focus on the three: the knowledge, the skill, and the attitude we require to get from the learner every day in a lesson, or we can say in a unit. Our verbs have to be action verbs so that we can measure them. If they are not measurable, even when we have assessment, then we cannot measure them. We cannot see what really happened in that lesson. So I think we have to make sure that the students can practically use or implement what they have learned in the classroom. As I said, alignment is very important.
Thank you, Dr. Almas. So I think we have seen that how important is setting objective, and we have seen setting objective from perspective of a school leader, what support need to give as a school leader for teachers in setting objective, and also we have seen some of the consideration. Let us go into deep. Now let me ask Dr. Merle, can you give us example of objectives that promote active participation of students in classroom? After all, we want our students to participate actively. So what kind of objective promotes that active participation?
Okay, so one of the things I actually like to do is get the children to think of questions that they can answer. So their learning objective is, how does the distance or the size of the solar panel relate to the amount of energy created? So they're solving problems through their learning objective. Obviously, if I'm doing a non-practical lesson, I will use my learning objectives from the national curriculum. So it may be to study and understand how solar energy works. But when I'm taking that and trying to get the students to really understand it, we do a practical activity so that they can engage in it, actually study how a solar panel works, what happens when in England, we're so dark at the moment. If I'm studying solar energy in December or January, we'll have to use a lamp to mimic the sun. But the main issue is that they need to get their hands on practical work to really understand how wind turbine works. We'll make a model wind turbine. So their learning objectives, if they're as a written statement, would always be then linked to getting their hands on something so that they can make those connections to understanding how it actually works in real life.
Thank you, Dr. Merle. So the next question is for Ms. Delfina. How can we align objective with core skills? We know that core skills are potential unlockers, and education is meant for unlocking the potential of children. So unlocking this potential or core skills need to be reflected in objectives. So how can we align objective or embed objective in core skills?
Okay, thank you. First of all, is looking at the gap that found in the context, in the area that I am, and the conditions that is surrounding the learners, the life matters that learners are facing. So by looking you insert the core skills while preparing objectives of the learning, like looking at the school context, the problem of truance and performance, academic performance, and peer pressures that learners face in their daily life. So when teaching in the session, you also catch up those problems and how to help the learners to solve the problem that they're facing. But also during session in the classroom, putting more emphasis on the subjects that are very rarely in the learner's life. But again, demonstrate or communicate these ways of solving problem while teaching, and giving learners opportunity to show and apply the knowledge that they have on how to solve the problems that they have in life, to have the ability to reason, critical thinking, and things of the kind. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Delfina. Dr. Almas, can you give us some examples of course objectives with core skills or objectives that shows core skills? And also, if you tell us assessment techniques, because we might require a different kind of assessment techniques for such objectives.
Okay, so if, for example, in a literacy skill lesson, if I can say students will be able to read, write, speak, and listen in an English classroom, this incorporated with a core skill I will have the critical thinking skills embedded into this. So the students will be able to locate information, they will explore information, they will interpret information, they will analyze information, they will organize information, and they will synthesize information. So they have here the language skill. They also have the critical thinking and problem solving skill. So this core skill in a small unit lesson, we can have this core skill, which allows them from knowledge to production stage of the lesson. Okay, because when they go to the library and they locate information, it is the knowledge aspect, but they will explore and they will organize. So they are going to use their critical thinking and problem solving skills. How are they, what will be the stages of assessment here? Well, the stage of assessment, as I said earlier, we have to start from the competency we are expecting of the learner. What is the learning competency we are expecting? So stage by stage, for example, if I may go back to this literary skill, I may say I want students to read a story and then analyze that story. So from the beginning, have they really located the type of story they are going to read? Have they identified the author? The author, for example, have they identified the content? This is the initial stage. And then if they are going to analyze it, they will analyze it, and then they will be able to share this. This is another stage. Finally, I will ask them to take that story and reproduce their story and share it with their classmates. So this is the production stage. So there are different ways of assessment. We have the alignment, as I said earlier, and the assessment. Is it assessment of the learning? Is it assessment for the learning? Or is it assessment as learning? So we have to check. I mean, are we assessing them generally, or is there a specific unit we are going to assess? How much they have really understood and how much they have really been able to produce.
Thank you, Doctor. I think one strong point you have mentioned is we need to consider the Bloom's taxonomy or wordings. Even most of our objectives are at knowing stage, at understanding stage, and we need to go further and try to come up with objectives that reflect analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and so on and so forth. And also we need to have a proper measurement so that those objectives are reflected on students. My next question goes to Mr. Work. How can you support your teacher learn from each other during setting objective? I think we have said that experience sharing is vital, important. Phillip said this previously, but still I know you are working this with your teachers and with schools around your area. So how can we promote such learning between schools, between teachers? Work?
Yeah, helping or supporting teachers to set their educational objectives as mainly planning instructional strategy, experience sharing, as somebody says before, and while we're experience sharing, it can be among schools or teachers and the former teachers and the new teachers, and having a common understanding towards to the system and the objective is the main thing. And the other thing is training should have to give training, and we should have to set a common goal for the educational objective too. One thing what I want to mention over here is our students are not the same. Every kid has their own personal best. So we are setting that objective not as we want, but we should have to consider we are teaching different gifted students. So we should have to have different platform and different objective, and project-based activity is really help the student to evaluate and to set a critical goal. So every kids are special. So our objective and our assessment, our whatever what we say right now is we should have to underline the students they have their own personal base. We are expecting to retrieve what's in them, not the main thing is not the material that we're going to put in them, that within the material, within the plan, we are still expecting new things out of them. So that's why we haven't seen a significant change in the world, especially on our continent. Our education system is not our objective, our setting objective need amendment, I think so. So what we should have to think is the students, the kids are unique for this universe. So we are here to help them to retrieve what's in them. We're not a knowledge providers, we're facilitators. So we have to design our everything, and depends on the students. So in the first place, we are not giving knowledge. We are giving a little challenge to broaden up their mind. It is a challenge. Just like our body needs a balanced diet food, this schooling system give a little challenge for kids' mind to develop their thinking capacity. So don't consider the material that we give them is a knowledge. It's not a knowledge by itself. It's a mechanism. It's a skill form and or a minimum general knowledge to broaden up their mind. But what is good is project-based education is really helpful for our nation, especially. So the student, their silly idea is significant. So let them think, let them form their opinion, let them think. Everything in this universe was silly at the beginning. I mean, everything is an answer of the problems. And if somebody thinks, it seems silly. So let's give them some time to think some silly ideas. The power of idea is significant. So it is good to listen to the student. It is good to design our objective. It depends. It varies from class to class, age to age, and student to a student. So as a school, we're going to set a different platform for a different student.
Thank you. I think it's a strong point. As educators, as teachers, we need to unlock the potential of our students. That is all about education or schooling. So our next question goes to Mr. Phillip. You have a strong school partnership. So is it possible to promote or to learn from each other within the framework of school partnership? You have a strong partnership with Tanzania and even other country, I expect. So how can we support teachers to learn from each other's in setting educational objectives and other educational matters?
Well, I think as I tried to state in the previously, it's really, really important not for teachers to be isolated and to work together. And you can work together as a school. And our new national curriculum does give you that chance to make the curriculum specific and bespoke to your school and the local area. Now, as a group of schools, we meet, all the head teachers meet every 2 weeks, and we decide on certain objectives of an improvement that we want to do. And one of them a few years ago was global projects, because we saw that as something every school could do. And that's how we started our link with all 12 schools in Bagamoyo, and Delphina is the deputy head of one of the schools there. And it's really nice to see her, because we did talk, and I'll agree with very much with Dr. Merrill that you have to make the curriculum interesting for pupils, and it has to come from their stage of learning and why they need to do this. And I remember talking to Delphina in the gardens of the school when we were over there, and she said, truancy is a problem here, and she's mentioned it today. And we talked about how do you make the curriculum engaging, and how do you bring children along with the curriculum, and that is the key. How do you make it interesting? And that's something that we discuss with head teachers, and the head teachers then go into their schools, and we devise plans with all of our schools. So we do it on a local basis within the schools, and then with our 12 schools in a local area, and that's how we came up with our Tanzania project. But again, you have to be very specific about the objectives that you want the children to learn, and then bring those, you know, those more global, the wider plans down to actually what are the children going to learn in the classroom, and how can we make it engaging for them. And also it's led to schools working with other schools. So groups of children from each of the year groups in the schools will go on a visit to a Hindu temple, and they'll come back and do, as a reporter, report to the other schools. And we'll do that with lots of other elements, and we in globalization and the UN objectives as well. And also, you know, when we came out from Tanzania, we all shared our videos, we all shared the work with them, and it engages the pupils. So that kind of working in partnership with that one thing that Delphina came up with, looking at truancy in schools in Bagamoyo, helped us all to think, well, actually, you know, it is really important to have all these fantastic plans we have, but how is it relevant to the children? How does it engage the children in the classroom level? And that's through making sure that the objectives are suitable and they relate to the children and they build on their previous experience.
Thank you, Mr. Phillip. I think you have mentioned powerful points in here. Yes, we learn quite a lot of things participating in partnership, because education is the same. The context might be different, but in both areas we have learners. So we need to work together and collaborate for a better learning outcomes in both ends. My next question is for Mr. Apollo. So you are also participating in school partnership, and there are lots of benefits again, besides setting objective and helping each other in creating educational objective. There are lots of benefits. So can you tell us the benefits your school gets from being partnership in British Council School Partnership? Okay, Mr. Apollo. Oh, okay.
Yeah, partnership is very, very important to our school, not only to the school, but to the whole system of the school, the teachers, the pupils. Yeah, first of all, it's a way of creating friendship. You know, when we got partnered up with this UK school, of course, we got a lot of friends, because the children in UK can write to our children, you know, through pen pals. And that's a way of, you know, improving on the communication of our children. Secondly, teachers get exposed to new things. Dr. Mary talked about relevant topics. Now, for example, the most challenging or the most problem we face is lack of teachers being exposed to new things. Because when they get exposed to new things, definitely it brings about positive changes in them. There's something which changes in them, you know, and you know those small changes can bring big improvement. So our teachers are being exposed to the teaching of the UK schools, and they know how they handle the children. You know, handling the children is very, very important to our African teachers, especially in Uganda. Because here in Uganda, you still have you still see a teacher who still, you know, raise their stick and beat the children. I mean, that's not the way. So we are trying to we expose these teachers, and they can know how basically they can handle the children, how they can teach in class. So, you know, friendship is very, very important, and also being exposed to new environment. The other thing is about it has improved our ICT in school. because now you look here, the children can now also chat with the UK children. You know, we have the computers, they can sit in the computer lab and they can chat. So in that way, even these remote children can learn how to use the computer, how they can communicate using the computer on the internet. So that's very, very important. The other thing is about we have got books, textbook, and that's what we call enriched learning. Now our children can receive textbooks and they read, because initially, you know, our schools in Uganda, they do a lot of actual blackboard teaching. They don't spare time for the children to go and read books in the library. But of course, some schools, they don't have books. So when we got this opportunity of partnering up with this school in UK, we managed to get some textbooks, and the children can easily learn, read through the textbook. Then you can find that sharing is very, very important in partnership, and we have been sharing information. And you know, information is very, very important in learning. So sharing has been paramount in this partnership. We have been sharing information. And of course, that is very, very crucial, especially when you are looking about bridging the gap of what we call the cultural diversity. So sharing is very, very important. And when you look into the education system, we need to do that. Sharing is very, very important. Information being shared.
Thank you, Mr. Apollo. I think besides cultural engagement, there are lots of lessons for teachers and school leaders to learn from each other on both sides, including setting objectives. So I think there are some questions, and whosoever interested can respond to these questions. The first question is around what are the common mistakes teachers usually do while setting educational objectives? Anyone interested can respond to this question. Okay, Dr. Merle.
So I think sometimes when you're planning lessons and setting objectives, you have it in your head as a teacher that this is what they need to learn. And that doesn't allow much growth for the children to take it down a different route. So sometimes we need to be a little bit more flexible with our own perceptions of what the learning objective should be. Sometimes we need to just allow it to take time and maybe come back to it towards the end of the lesson or the next lesson even. So having a real fixed, rigid plan as a teacher when you're working with young children or older children doesn't necessarily always work. So I like a little bit more flexibility.
Okay, flexibility is one of the common mistakes because teachers usually guided by the textbook, the syllables, and they don't want to go out of that. So any further response on this question? Any common mistake we might mention, Mr. Phillip?
I agree totally with what Dr. Merrill has said. There has to be that flexibility. It's almost like if you build a framework around what you're going to teach, and you have that, you can draw on the children's experience too. And that's what I was trying to say earlier about having a range of levels in an objective for children to be able to access what you're trying to achieve, you know, and different abilities, because, you know, if you're aiming too high, you'll lose the lower ability children. And if you aim too low, you won't engage the high ability children. But it's, I think, in agreement with her as well, is that it mustn't be activity based. It must be how are we trying to lead the learning, and then based around what are the activities and how are we going to achieve that, which can be, and if you're leaving that flexibility in, can be a bit unnerving sometimes and worry less experienced teachers. But that is crucial to, you know, having your outstanding teachers, I think.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is around core skills. We have mentioned importance of embedding core skills. What are core skills? Can anyone tell us more about core skills? Okay, Miss Delphine.
Okay, core skills are the ability of ability to adapt changes in life, in the global economy, that how learners are going to live in their life experience, the empirical life, that how are they going to apply what they have in their brain? That's what matters. How can they adapt changes? How can they face the real world, especially in this global life?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Like any additional point? Like Miss Delphine said, core skills are 21st century skills, and we need to prepare our learners, after all, for 21st century challenge. So these skills might be critical thinking, innovation, problem solving, digital literacy, citizenship, and so on and so forth. So we need to prepare our students for that. Like True Work said, we are not pouring knowledge into students. Rather, we need to unlock those their potential, and core skills are meant for unlocking their potentials, helping them to explore their capabilities. Thank you. So any other point, you want to mention? We have 1 minute for each of you. For our viewers, I think there are positive feedback from viewers so far. There are no questions, and viewers mentioned that they have learned quite a lot of things. So, Mr. Phillip.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the partnership we've got with Delphina, and I've seen on the comments that there's quite a few of the head teachers from Bagamoyo who are listening to this and watching this. And I just wanted to say to them, I've been involved in partnerships as a single school in India and Nepal and various countries around the world, but this is the first time with a group of 12 schools, and it's been just the most fantastic experience. Not just the actual project that we did to set up the Schools Around the World website, but also to meet everybody. And even in this very strange time of the pandemic, to keep in contact and to keep sharing our thoughts and our ideas. And you know, hello to everybody there. And it's been just a fantastic experience. And I have to say, England in the middle of a Brexit, which I find actually quite embarrassing, especially at this time of year when we're all meant to be working together really well. It's great to have this global communication between everybody.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Doctor, but before that, there is one question. What is the premium of embedded core skills in the curriculum? Dr. Almas, maybe if you respond to this, what is the premium of embedded core skills in the curriculum?
Sorry, are you saying how can we maybe embed them in the curriculum? How can we embed core skills into the curriculum, right?
Let me amend this way. How do you know that one curriculum has core skills in it, or the syllabus has core skills in it?
Okay. Well, the core skills are not lessons to be taught alone. They are facilitation, we can say. For example, if when we look at a curriculum that has core skills, we see that the skills, the basic skills, are facilitated or they are taught using the core skills. Like, how do we promote citizenship in the lesson? How do we promote critical thinking and problem solving in the lesson? How do we promote digital literacy in the lesson? And so on and so forth. So we know that the curriculum has core skills embedded in it when the teaching or when the activities are devised based on to work together, to critically think or to share and so on and so forth. Last week with our curriculum unit, people in the ministry, we had this training and we have been evaluating about 5 countries' curriculums, and we really saw that these core skills were embedded in them, as I said, looking at the activities. How are the lessons given? How do you teach the lesson? For example, how do you teach the maths? like mathematics for grade 2? How is it taught? It's not only the, if you are taking, for example, measurement, you are not teaching measurement. How are you teaching measurement? Do you encourage the learners to collaborate and work together? Do you encourage the learners to critically think and explore the types of measurement that could be used in the classroom? Do you encourage them to look at what resources they have at hand so that they can explore or they can exploit to do the measurement? So we know that core skills are embedded, as I said, on the strategies used, the activities written in order to teach a subject or to teach a lesson.
Thank you, Dr. Almas. Dr. Merle?
Okay, so I just want to reiterate everything that you've said and Phillip said and Dr. Almas has said. You know, those skills of understanding that we are global citizens and how to apply that to our everyday lives wherever we are living is really, really important. And that's why I try and link everything to the Sustainable Development Goals, because everything we do has a ripple effect. And those ripples can be felt worldwide if we don't, you know, understand how our actions affect them. So, you know, I think with anything we do in schools, it's a hugely powerful position in terms of influencing young people and where they go to in their lives. You know, for me, my passion is environmental education, and I know it means that my children in school are really engaged with what we're doing. So all I can say is if you go into your classroom, whatever you try and teach, whether it's any type of subject, you know, go in with passion and show that you're so enthusiastic about it and make it relevant to their lives. And their lives are going to be different from our lives, just the way that the world is changing.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Merle. Indeed, a strong point, yeah. Work.
Well, so many things mentioned, but I just want, we all are more specified about intellectual quality. Should be designed as an objective. Hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, all right. So a teacher must ensure that all of his or her objectives contain a moral content, because that's a very valuable thing that we shouldn't ignore. If it is education, education should.
I think there is.
Hello?
Yeah, you are broken anyways. Yeah, you can, okay, you can proceed now.
Okay, so as educator, we should have to focus on the moral quality. And this is a very important thing. So educated person has a good moral value too. So we teachers are expected to train them. We expected just more.
Okay, so yeah, as educator, we need to focus on moral values, and we need to have values as well, because we are preparing our students for, you know, 21st century challenge. Miss Delphine. Okay, Miss Delphine.
Okay, thank you. What I have to say is that these core skills goes with context, that the situation faced by people differ contextually, that the way to insert them in the lesson differs also according to the condition that the teacher is facing in the classroom, the number of learners, the environment. So this, the time, all this matters as what is the teacher the learners are facing in real life. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Apollo. You are on mute. You are mute, please. You are on mute.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello? Can you? Yeah, I'm saying
Yes,
that
yes.
to achieve all, to achieve all this, we need to make sure that teachers, they don't cram or reproduce whatever they get in textbooks. We need to make everything more practical. Like we said, everything should be action oriented. Our people should be taught, like Dr. Mary talked about. I still talk about this. Everything should be relevant to the pupils and to the entire, to all the teachers and the pupils. So we should stop the system of cramming and reproducing whatever we get from textbooks. Then we pass this information directly to the children. We should stop that. Then we should look at things which can help the children, relevant information and topics. We should cite out things which can make the children learn more better than just getting everything through textbooks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, things should all be planned.
Great. Yeah. So thank you, our speakers, viewers all over the world. We have discussed with experienced teachers, school leaders, and CEO of organizations in charge of different schools. We have learned quite a lot of lessons from how a teacher can set educational objectives, which is relevant for students. And also we have seen that the need to learn from each other. We have seen example of how schools in partnership learning from each other and how partnership is supporting schools in Africa, Eastern Africa, and the UK to learn from each other. And also it's very important for school leaders to support their teachers in setting educational objectives, and these objectives need to reflect the real life, and students must be at the heart of setting educational objective. And after all, we are not pouring knowledge on the students, rather we are unlocking their potential and preparing them for 21st century challenge. Happy Christmas and New Year for my panelists as well as for viewers. Next time we'll come on different topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Lovely to see everyone. Bye.